Welcome to our executive interview series at the 2025 Zero Trust Summit here at the Spy Museum, presented by CyberScoop. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Brian Mikkelsen, Vice President and General Manager for U.S. Public Sector at Datadog. Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I'd like to start by asking, what do you see as some of the biggest operational challenges that most government agencies still face in establishing a zero trust environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. And frankly, what I think it's based in, the IT systems that the government's building and managing, they are becoming more complex at an accelerating rate. And when you think about zero trust, it unto itself, it is a fairly complex set of things. If we think about zero trust, we're talking about identities, every device, every network, every application, and all of the data. And how do you build security around all of that while making all of that quite available to the public and or the consumers of the information within the walls of government? When Datadog thinks about that, we think about how do we solve for that. And so in the Datadog world, we really think a ton about infrastructure metrics, application traces, and logs, but it really goes beyond that. We're the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader for application performance monitoring and observability, but we're also the Magic Quadrant leader for digital experience monitoring. So not only do we do everything with infrastructure, application, and logs, we're connecting out to the front end as well. So the devices, the browsers, the users, the identity, we're connecting all these dots via a single unified platform for full stack, hybrid architecture, observability, and security.
It's a lot of data points to connect.
It sure is. I hope it's not too much for the audience. I think maybe what we can do is even simplify the answer. We talk a lot at Datadog about simple, not simplistic. And I think that gets back to the challenge that we talked about is things are getting more complex at an accelerating rate. How do you simplify that? And so the way Datadog thinks about this is that there's been a lot of good decisions made over the last 5, 10, 15 years. And I think the way this usually plays out in the vendor community and the maturation of markets, it really boils down to, in the beginning, people tend to make best of breed type decisions. And as things evolve, they tend to make platform and enterprise-wide type decisions. What Datadog is a single unified platform that brings all of this together in a very simplistic way. The way that we tend to work with our customers is we find one of the problems that they're trying to solve. So perhaps they're trying to solve a cloud posture management where they want to make sure their cloud configurations are correct. They might want to solve for a cloud identity management where they want to make sure that user privilege hasn't been extended to the wrong users or privileges don't linger or become expand. They may have a cloud SIM use case where what they're trying to figure out is what are my attack vectors, what IP addresses am I accepting? What Datadog does to simplify all this is it's a single unified platform. All of the integrations are there, 850 out-of-the-box integrations with third-party applications. And then frankly, we can bring these tools to bear on any type of internal custom application as well. So as much as it's a challenging space, given the complexity of devices, identity, networks, infrastructure, and data, but a single unified platform from a market leader very much simplifies that approach. And what we tend to do is, instead of coming in and trying to boil the ocean, we like to find that one unique use case, help a customer, help the government understand how to apply that, get them into the platform, and then what they start to see is the simplicity of bringing other capabilities to bear.
Terrific. And then second, how would you characterize the extent to which most government agencies are actually achieving real-time visibility of users and devices on government networks? And what still has to happen to reach that point?
Yeah, I would love to give a very positive feedback. What I would say is most are trying, and I think that's good, right? I think the statistics I've read, 90+% of CISOs and CIOs have a zero trust initiative, and so they're making progress in that regard. I think when you really dig into that process, I think it's still hampered by culture, by politics, by the incumbent technology solutions. Those solutions that they've bought, and I'll give you examples without calling out any brands, but they might have one product that does network observability, watching network performance or network device management. They'll have yet another product for infrastructure, another product for applications, and yet another product for logs. That unto itself is the challenge. If we think about For the last 10, 15, almost 20 years, we've been talking DevOps as a culture, which is the shift from kind of monoliths and development doing their build, and then throwing that over the wall to development. It's this idea of bringing everybody together. I often think that DevOps is often spoke of, rarely seen, and now we're also starting to talk DevSecOps in these processes. So I think the government's making progress, but perhaps the progress needs to come faster. And I think part of this just comes down to build versus buy, and not being afraid to say, even though that was a good decision 10, 15 years ago, there's been a tremendous amount of innovation in the market over the last 5 to 10 years. If we think about, take something like an AWS, those cloud initiatives started in 2006 to 2008 timeframe. We're almost 20 years past the inception of the initial cloud utilization, yet decisions that were made back in those times, they still exist today. So I think if the government's looking for ways to ease the burden and make progress in a more aggressive, time-sensitive manner, I think it's time to reevaluate some of those decisions. And I think it's time to consider what are the more modern platforms and what's the advantage of doing all of this in a single unified platform. And I'll give you what I think is the number one advantage for using a platform like Datadog. It's not just the simplicity of bringing devices, identities, infrastructure, applications, and logs all together in a correlated way. It's really the ability to put the people into the same source of truth. And so when you have a single unified platform, what you've really done is you're breaking down the silos that exist today. And the way I tend to demonstrate this with customers, I ask them to think about one of their last Severity 1 tickets. How many teams and how many tools did they have to bring in to their ITSM to try and solve that problem? And what you end up with is 10, 15, 20 different teams, people, and tools, all across different browser experiences, all sort of saying, no, I don't think it's me, I think it's you, here's what I'm seeing on my side. When you have a single unified platform with all of your users in the exact same platform, looking at the same data, you're no longer having contextual discussions about, I think it's you, you think it's me. You're actually pinpointing the problem sooner, you're remediating that problem sooner, and when we think about and combining it back to zero trust, we're actually avoiding the problem altogether by doing a better job of managing all of that information and workflow from the very beginning.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, Brian Mikkelsen, thank you so much for joining us here at the Zero Trust Cybersecurity Summit.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.